So I think just real quick, let's do an elevator pitch for each of you guys just so people can kind of understand what it is that you're doing.
So, hey everyone, I'm Michael, co-founder and CEO of Zero-G. Zero-G is the first modular AI chain, and our first product is the fastest programmable data availability layer on the market today. We can achieve speeds at least 50,000 times faster and 100x cheaper than dank sharding or other competitors on the market, which is super important for the future of AI, because if you want to do things like on-chain model training, you need very large data pipelines in the gigabytes per second, not in the megabytes per second. Also super excited to be partnering with Mind Network.
Nice.
Hi everyone, Masha here. I represent Aethir. I'm on the marketing team. Our founder, Mark Ryder, couldn't make it, and this is my first week. Actually, my first 3 days was Aethir. So I'll tell you as much as I know. My background is I come from wealth management, UBS and HSBC, marketing. I used to be an executive at Polygon, head of public relations, and then various marketing roles. I've been running a PR marketing events company in Web3 since 2017, Crypto Paralab. Worked with the likes of ZK Sync on their content, enterprise account abstraction cases, with the Casper Labs, Anchor, and here I am with Aethir. So, who have heard of Aethir? Okay, our partners, great. Okay, so we have few people. Who here knows about DePIN? Decentralized physical infrastructure, great. So Aethir is a decentralized cloud infrastructure specifically for gaming and AI companies. So think about it as a GPU for enterprise. We're enterprise grade versus what is Akash and Render. They're mostly for retailers. What's special about the company is that we've been founded just in 2021, based in Singapore, about 100 people team right now. We raised about $130 million to date. In March, we had a really successful note sale, raised about $120 million just in March. So if you're part of this note sale, thank you for supporting us. And we are launching in June, so stay tuned for this. So think about Aethir as a marketplace. The problem right now with the GPU is that it's underutilized. So all these data mining companies, enterprises, telcos, they use this computing power and only to the 10% of it. So what Aethir is doing, we're taking those 90% remaining of the GPU computing power on the supply side of the marketplace, and on the demand side of marketplace, we sell it to specifically gaming and AI companies. And we're really glad to partner with Allora and with the OG and also with Mind Network. So incredible to be here among all our partners.
Sweet.
Hey, what's up everybody? I'm also Mike. Can't get away from always having another Mike in the classroom or the panel, but I'm head of go-to-market at Allora Labs, formerly known as Upshot. We're building out the Allora network, and what the Allora network is, it's a self-improving decentralized collective intelligence network. I know that's very buzzwordy, so I'll break it down a little bit further. It's used mainly for financial and behavioral applications. A way that you might be able to think about it easily would be one of the topics in the network might be Bitcoin time series prediction. So what's the price of Bitcoin going to be in X amount of time? There you'd have workers as well as reputers. Workers are people that are running models off-chain, all geared toward solving that defined objective. And then you have reputers that look at the current market conditions and which models historically perform the best in similar market conditions. And then it uses that to create a weighted average as a single inference as the output. And we're seeing in our own research, and there's a lot of academic papers that are coming out from places like Carnegie Mellon, Stanford, UC Berkeley. They're all showing using a combination of models is likely the future of AI, as that output greatly outperforms any single model in the network over a period of time. So that's the long and short of it, but looking forward to give you guys a little bit more information. Oh, you already got yours.
Thanks, Mike.
Cool. Hey everyone, my name is Jiahao San. People call me Jay-san or San. CEO and founder of Flock. So Flock is actually a technical term for federated learning and blockchain. It's basically our research topic, and we publish papers on top journals, top conferences about this. We monetize it into a company from 2022, and now, well, what we're doing basically is to do decentralized AI training without needing to take your data to any third party. Basically, your data stays local, but we can still do co-training. The platform is out already, train.flock.io, where you can actually play with models and also being a validator to the network. We work with like biggest providers like Foundry and Akash later. I will be in the Akash event, sorry. About providing those GPU hardware devices, and also with communities like Numerai and Kaggle, Hugging Face, those engineers from there to join the training to help us, bring the model in a more decentralized way and deliver to the business use cases. And also, I'm coming from a wealth management background, so just a lady mentioned, from Royal Bank in Canada. I'm their global head of AI before, so I was totally in a pure AI industry before. So so it's my first startup in the Web3 space. It's cool.
You're in for one hell of a ride, man. It's a different world. I'm curious, one of the questions I want to ask is, first to the audience, and then you guys can give them your opinion. I don't really know, okay, quickly about me though, I've been in crypto for 12 years, and I really fell in love with the space, the idea of decentralization, peer-to-peer capabilities. Was a really big fan of what Julian Assange was doing with WikiLeaks, and then he actually had to use Bitcoin to continue to fund donations, and that's when I realized that this is very, very powerful to have the decentralized, open, permissionless, censorship-resistant network, and that's literally what I really, really found super powerful, and thought, imagine this type of idea and how powerful that could be for everything else in the world, even if it wasn't meant to leak a bunch of secret documents, but even if you just wanted to make a more efficient version of Uber, for example, right? Why not do that? And also, I kind of came to and then if you look at token economics and token models too, which I'm also very passionate about, it's interesting the way that when you find a good design, it aligns all parties involved in an ecosystem. Whereas today, when you have for-profit companies, they are value extractors between those two parties, right? So you have a middleman who puts together two people, often they're not really needed, but they still take value out of that. So if you could just build a protocol, get rid of that middleman, then you have a very efficient system. And then most people don't even care about decentralization. They just want to either make more money for the thing that they sell, or pay less for the thing that they buy. So I think that's interesting at the end of the day, and that simple point leads me to believe that the people who are building the best models in a first principles approach, meaning that when we think about the core tenets of blockchain, then these are going to be the guys that win. There's a lot more, right? And then my company does a bunch of things. We have 0 to 1 accelerator. We run funds. We have a media company, and then I've got my socials and things like that. Okay, with that being said, yeah. So there's an interesting thing, right? And I'm curious. Show of hands from the audience. Who thinks that AI should be open source? Do you guys still feel like that would be the case if, because we also know that when you open source something, anyone can use it, right? And then you have other adversaries and people who tell us are bad people that we may not believe, but you might have that to think about. I don't really know how I feel. I think it should be open source because we have to be able to trust the rules in that thing. And I think there's no other ways to trust the rules and the way that things are trained unless we can see that information. But that's my 2 cents. I'll ask you guys later. How about everyone in here who thinks that AI and the models should be decentralized? So interesting. So I would have always assumed that the answer to both of those are yes, right? That would be my thing. But then I've talked to quite a few people who are building them, and some of them said that most tend to agree that it should be decentralized, but a lot of them think that it should not be open sourced. And I don't know how I feel about this, but I think it's I'd like to get you guys' thoughts on that, because I think it's because you just often hear somebody like kind of regurgitating what they hear from someone else without actually being able to explain why they have an answer for that. And if you guys don't have an answer, that's fine too. But and this is just, I don't need to like, just anyone can jump in. If you don't have anything to say, don't say. But
I'll take it if no one else is taking it.
do it.
All right. So your two questions are: should it be open source? Should it be decentralized?
Yeah.
I would say for open source, yes. I agree with that for the most part. However, I would put a caveat on that. As I mentioned, we're building a self-improving collective intelligence network. We support both open source and closed source models. And where you have that combined aggregated answer consistently outperforming any of the single models in the network. So we've been speaking with some larger institutions, market makers, and their models are their secret sauce. That's their secret blend of herbs and spices. They don't want to give it up. So, and we can get into this a little bit later about some of the use cases and applications of FHE within the Allora network, because those are really exciting as well. But they're saying, all right, well, I would love to participate. I don't mind if my model is being used as a part of an aggregated output, that's including other models, but people can't see the output of my model, and I don't want them to know what my model is. So I think there's room for both open source and closed source models. And then your second question, should AI be decentralized? I would say there definitely is room for decentralization. I think right now you don't really need it all that much in terms of, I think it provides a lot of censorship resistance, which as the government starts cracking down, regulating AI more, that can come into something that's extremely important. But for right now, you're not quite there yet. However, decentralizing it does provide some additional benefit in terms of uptime, where you may go from 3 or 4 nines to 5 nines. But I think it's one of those things that it's gradually going to get more and more important the further we look down the time horizon.
Okay, well, I'll go for it. All right. Yeah, I would totally agree around this. I think for me, it depends on the use case. So if you have an AI agent that's booking a restaurant for you or booking a hotel, like, sure, have it be closed source, have it be on an edge device. But if you're then starting to get into kind of societal use cases, let's say even an agent running a traffic control system, manufacturing control system, absolutely should be decentralized, should be open source. So we know exactly what went into that model. How do I know where the data came from, what the weights of that model are, how the data was labeled and cleaned, what decisions were made along the way, where's the model stored, like what version of the model am I getting? I would want to know all of this so that I know exactly how a particular model or agent is performing for this particular use case. So we've got full alignment across kind of human interests and the model's interests. And then in a decentralized context, we can also put it into an environment where it can't cheat. We can enforce slashing conditions. We can enforce economic incentives. We can enforce specific rules on the blockchain network. In a centralized context, especially if you have an AI agent that is hyper intelligent, let's say beyond human intelligence. Let's say you give the model and say like, hey, I want to make sure all the trash pickups have been done in this particular city. The agent can say like, I've done all of it. Here's my proof. Here's the centralized database records. I did all of it, but none of it happened in reality. And so that can't easily happen on a blockchain. So I think it depends really on the use case that you're using. I think the counter argument to open source would be, well, there's a security constraint. You have these hyper intelligent models, a bad actor could use it, and then you can do the same thing with closed source, except it can be cut off at some point. And so I think it's kind of a mute argument. Eventually you'll have AI agents kind of battling each other, and there'll be an escalation and so on. So I think open source plus decentralized is the way to go for especially societal use cases.
Yeah, I think when we talk about AI, AI is not the whole, right? It's not a term just for the whole thing. That it has components. It has different layers of, like compute. There's data. There's even for the training itself, there are inferencing, there are fine tuning, there are training itself, and the training itself is not only on the model. There's both base model. There's some fine tuned model, or even you can use LoRa fine tuning for the fine tuning itself. So there's different stages for the AI. AI is not a term just for. I mean, AI is a term for the whole thing. But when we talk about open source or decentralized, we should consider each component of that, whether it makes sense to make them either open source or decentralized. So open source, of course, I'm a supporter of open source because it's age now, and we will see that there are successful operating, just like before, there are successful operating systems like Windows, Mac OS, but still Linux survives, right? And also it gives some opportunity for the community to have their own version of Linux, Ubuntu, right? So to make the world, at least a better place. So, and for decentralization, I mean, many of the use cases where decentralization makes sense, and also there are some areas, maybe, for example, training the base model. You wouldn't say that decentralized makes sense as of today, because of course the bandwidth, the limit of the communication between different GPUs, that will definitely slow down the whole base model training process, right? But when it comes to areas like doing evaluation, like we have different people with different feedbacks of the model result to make sure the model stays like objective, right? Not too much biased about by some certain group of people, or for example, like for what we are doing, a fine-tuning bit of it. We do training, and then we keep the data stays local in everyone's local devices, but we don't hold control of the whole training. They do voting, they check out the results and metrics to make sure everyone joining the training being a good guy, right? So that we don't face an issue with centralization in traditional federated learning like Google and Apple is doing. Now everyone's now using the phone, using your input software keyboards, right? So Apple and Google is predicting your next words, and they say it stays local, all the data stays local, but who knows, right? So so using decentralization is a way to have the public governance consensus to make sure, hey, it is genuine. It's
Yeah, I would add something on the decentralized AI and actually chunk it up a little bit. So centralization versus decentralization. Historically, we've been always giving our power away to governments, to central organizations, to compromise on getting the benefits from it. If everybody is using Facebook, right, or Instagram. So if you don't want to use it, you don't want to give your data, don't use Facebook. But it's free and you love it, so you'll keep on using it. So how can we possibly, in decentralized AI, avoid this pitfall of centralization and at the same time build this collective intelligence, which is AI? So think of decentralization is the herd of birds flying together and they know what they're doing. There's no central authority. Or think of our brain, how our brain is computing information. It's also a sort of decentralization. So how can we achieve it in the AI? So have you guys heard of zero trust or ZK proofs? Yes, okay, so let's go to zero trust. So basically, with this technology, the startups would use let's take the examples of the health data. The startups would use the AI to be able to predict the next pandemic. So they analyze all the health data of patients. Let's take Christian, for example. Christian, he keeps his personal data on his smartphone, and he's concerned with his privacy. He doesn't want to reveal it. So the startup that is analyzing this health data has this AI algorithm, and he will scan for the health records of Christian. And startup cannot give this data to anyone because it's a trade secret of the startup. And the Christian doesn't want to give his health data to the startup either. So with the new algorithms in AI, with the zero proofs, with the zero trust, it allows to gather this information without revealing it and be able to get this actionable insights without actually accessing the data. So using the zero trust in decentralized AI is something that I've been learning a lot about and researching, working with ZK Sync also on this. And I find that decentralized AI is possible and it's here.
So there's a documentary called Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers. I'm not sure how you guys feel about, UFOs and stuff like that, or if the U.S. government has alien spaceships, but regardless, I'm pretty damn sure that they do. But even if you don't believe that's true, let's just take this as a hypothetical, right? Bob Lazar, a guy who worked at Area 51, long story short, he was afraid for his life. He came out and became a whistleblower, and then went on Channel 8 and then told his story to like millions and millions of people. And when he went on there, and then recently they made a documentary about it, but he was, after he went for the first time and was a whistleblower, no one heard from him for like 30 years. And he was saying that the way that they do these things at these, he works at Area S4, but it's like Area 51. He said that the way that they did it is they're trying to reverse engineer these spacecraft that have like far superior technology than humans know how to make. And he said that's just not the best way to operate from a productivity perspective, right? It's like, he said that the way that scientists like to work is you like to work and be able to share data with each other so you can build off of the knowledge of what you guys have done so that you don't have to learn everything from scratch. And this is kind of like why we have, public medical journals and then, public, the entire public database of knowledge, I believe, should be free and open for anybody to read, review, and work from. I guess where I'm going with this is that when we are looking at something so severe and so life-changing for our human civilization, and I also don't know how many of you guys know what P-Doom is. Does anyone know what P-Doom is? Oh, shit. Should I even tell them? Fuck, that's gonna be sad.
Too much of a black pill.
It's probably like one of them, so P-Doom is the probability of doom. And that literally means like what is the probability? And actually like AI safety researchers actually assign a number to this. What is the probability that we become, at best case, we become like pets and like dogs and cats today, right? Like we are much lower on the food chain, and like hopefully if these like when you were saying more intelligent than us, that was like, I think you're insinuating like maybe slightly more intelligent than us. But to put things in perspective, with Moore's law and the way that the way how fast these brains could actually think, one of the smartest people I know ever, he said that in about 10 years, an AI will be able to think what we think in 1 second. An AI will think of how much we think in our entire lifetime. So imagine if that was adversarial, like you would have no chance ever to do any, it's done, right? Like absolutely done. So when it comes down to like these kind of things, and anyway, I think PDM is like a pretty scary thing, but it's real to think about. And I bring it up because my thoughts are that this is something that we should be working on as a collective globally. And yeah, everyone can do their own private enterprises, but like, if you guys all become the biggest things in your niche in 4 years, and like we're not here in 5 years, and we don't get to like celebrate all that stuff. And I think this is the first time that I have ever been, and literally by the smartest person I've ever met in my life, and I say that like sincerely, where this is, it's like a real thing. And so like with that being said, I think that having our knowledge base of everything that we learn for one collective goal of creating an unbiased, decentralized, meaning that the governance has control mechanisms to prevent bias, to prevent any type of ownership of the network. And I think that if we could do something like that together, then we can kind of have that as like a base model where people can go and build out their own private enterprises on that, or you can build other models. But I think that'd be really interesting. And then I think this is where we're going to get into FHE side of things. Like, also, in what circumstances does FHE come into the picture? And is it always necessary to have FHE in models? And in what case, would it be necessary to do it? Because I think you guys are all using it, right? And then also, I guess on that, I'll elaborate. Like, have you explored other methods of encryption to protect data, and were they not sufficient, or, yeah?
So I guess the question is why FHE? So FHE stands for fully homomorphic encryption. Basically, the input and the output are both fully encrypted. And so super kind of like the holy grail of encryption, essentially.
And the processing, too. I think that's the most important part, like, right?
Well, it's the processing itself. Like if you look at ZK proofs versus FHE requires a ton more processing, compute, and power. So perfect for like really high performance type of systems. But you'd want to use it in specific things where, let's say, you have personally identifiable records like your DNA, and somebody could, like an adversary could target your DNA for specific bioweapons, for example. So you'd want to keep things like that hidden from general public view. And so in cases like that, you can use FHE because essentially it's unknown to the one processing it and it's unknown to the one that's storing it as well. So it's almost like magic. You can basically don't know anything about the data and you can derive inputs and get proofs about the data. And so wonderful technology. I think still quite a few probably years of really developing and building it out so that it can actually be used at scale in models, especially in AI type of applications. So big fans of FHE and processing it. So we're enabling a lot of, so we have two components, 0G storage and 0G DA. And so the DA part is built around the storage systems. And so if you're encrypting data in the storage system, then you can utilize it for the data availability property as well. And so that's how we're basically partnering with Mind Network.
Can I just add one thing before you guys jump in? Just to clarify, because I think that like right now when you send a message, like if I send you a message on WhatsApp, like it's encrypted on my device, it's sent over the airwaves and it's encrypted. But then in order for that message to be then read by the machine, the algorithm, whatever, at WhatsApp, it needs to be decrypted into plain text for a second so it can be processed. Or if there's work to be done, it also needs to be decrypted in plain text, even if it's for a split second, so that the machine can actually understand what it's looking at and what it needs to do. Then it comes up with a response. It encrypts that response locally and then sends it back to the original user. And this is where we get a vulnerability, right? And this is, I think the first time I probably learned from FHE was Mind Network, like really dug into it. But that had added up to everything that I had learned before about, for me, what I'm the most excited about for AI is literally being able to create a digital version of me, like a computer version, a brain of me that knows exactly how I think, exactly how to respond to things, and so I can just trust it. And I would let, in order for that to actually be the case, and I think for a lot of us, that's probably the most exciting thing, right? Like you can just have multiple people, multiple versions of you, and then you can even have them be your personality, your ethos, your thoughts, and then they can actually learn a lot more, so they could actually be more powerful versions of you, helping you do your work. But in order for that to happen, they must know your deepest, darkest, skeletons in the closet stuff, right? They need to know everything about you. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to do as good of a job as they could if they knew everything about you. So every email. And I don't know about you guys, but like I definitely don't want Google, Microsoft, Zuck knowing everything about me, right? So until we get FHE to where the entire process, so the difference is that with FHE, somehow, and I'm not the guy who can describe, but like encrypted on my device locally, sent to the machine, it never turns into plain text. The machine is literally like a magic superpower that can actually somehow process that information and knows what it is, and then send you back the response encrypted, so it's never decrypted into plain text ever. And I think that's why people are so excited about it, because that small risk of vulnerabilities is really what prevents people from allowing things to really explode. Jason, go if you want. Or Mike, you do it.
All right, I'll drop some alpha on you guys. I'll give you some real-world use cases of how we're looking to solve, or not solve FHE, but use Mind Network, use FHE to solve some really important problems. So as I mentioned, Allora, we're doing a decentralized collective intelligence network where you have multiple models being ran for a defined objective. So there's three use cases we're primarily looking to use FHE. The first one would be where you have these third parties they want to train models based off data. Now that data can have personally identifiable information, it can have sensitive business intelligence. If you're working with, say, a social network and they don't want people to know time on site, they're going out to marketing saying, hey, the typical time on site is 3 hours. Well, really, 75% of that is bots that are online 24/7. The other remaining percent are people that are online 20, 30 minutes a day. It averages out to 3 hours, but they don't want people to see that raw plain text data. So to have the ability to train models through FHE where the person that's training that model can't see the plain text, maybe they can see the headers, that's one of the things that we're really excited about. The second use case is going back to what I was saying earlier about working with institutions and market makers. They want to participate in the network, but they want their model to be closed source. They don't even want the output to be something that can be read on chain. So using FHE where they are going to submit encrypted inferences, and then the aggregation gets done through FHE to create a single output that can either be encrypted or deciphered and read. And then the third is kind of a combination of all of them where, let's say we're working with an exchange and they want to do some behavioral analysis on how much wash trading is going on through the exchange. Well, they would supply the data set. They want that to be trained through FHE where the person actually building the model can't see that plain text because it's extremely sensitive. And then they probably want the output, so use case number 2, to also be encrypted. But the person that's also running that model, they don't know who it is. It could be someone living in their mom's basement and they could go to 4chan, they could go to Twitter, they could go to the media. They're not going to trust that person, so they don't want that person to know. So doing the first 2 use cases, but then combined where you're running the model actually in FHE, so the person running the model doesn't have access to what that inference is. That's kind of the holy grail. That's one we're looking to definitely solve. Hopefully it's here sooner rather than later, but those are 3 real world use cases that you're going to see applications for FHE. As soon as the technology is there, there's going to be people that want to be using this. So couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, so this FHE is sexy as quantum, as sexy as DK, but they all have the same thing in common. It's not practical as of today, right? So you can't really run FHE large language model because it's not there. Including not only just the computing time and also because the complexity of you have to encrypt it and then the model has to run the encrypted data to make sure it's still accurate. And similar ideas, there are other sexy technologies like binary network, meaning that I'm decomposing an artificial neural network into a binary 010101 stuff so that you can be fully encrypted, but still be a similar idea, be run in an encrypted way, but because there's only 0 and 1, so it's a bit easier and more practical. So yes, they're all sexy. Like they all can happen maybe from today, next moment, or sometime in the future, right? So I like them. I like them all. But the only thing is, you can't just. Of course, for startups who are trying to tackle in this industry very well, and I do see some startups, including my network and also some other players. They can do nowadays. They can do regression models, classification models, those statistical models already in a way that they can publish papers. That's cool. But think about the growth of large language models as of today. So by the time they maybe tackle some more statistical models, GPT is already 10. So yeah, would that catch up? I don't know. That's why. So that's why we focus more on the federated learning side, where it's actually practical and it can be done today. And we're already working with like hospitals, financial industries. That keeps our user data local, but still run the federated learning to train and fine tune the model. And of course, because federated learning is not encryption method. It's a training framework. It's putting the machine learning training into an on-edge style so that we don't have to collect users' data, right? So we are actually free to work with any encryptions. Like we had a paper just published to IEEE transaction on big data. It's called ZKFL. It works with our our other researchers in other ZK companies. So basically, yes, it's a federated learning framework, but with ZK as a lock to help you maybe to secure your user data, right, the data transmission. And I think possibly FHE, FL can happen sometimes. So yeah, so it's I would say it's a great and a sexy technology, and I'm definitely waiting for one day can be efficiently compute in practice.
What needs to happen for FHE to be usable so as a good user experience? I know a team building a layer 1 infrastructure, and they're using FHE and ZK ML contracts, and they said that with one of their bots that they're running, just like equivalent of like a ChatGPT or something, it's 18 seconds from the time that they run the prompt until they get the inference back, which is an abysmal user experience. And that's the best that they can do right now. So I think everyone's very, very honest about the fact that FHE is not even close to consumer readiness. So what needs to happen for that to happen? Is it just a hardware thing, or is it the fact that we need to think about how to make FHE itself be more efficient?
Yeah, FHE, the encryption method of the FHE itself, definitely. I think like researchers like Mason from my network, like they are quite strong on this. So if there are some new breakthroughs of the algorithm itself, I think that would be more a stimulus to the algorithm itself, right? But and also hardware. I'm more optimistic to the hardware part because it's growing all the time, right? Like soon, maybe 3 years later, everyone can afford a NVIDIA 4090 at home, or maybe even your phone are already at that power. So yeah, I think hardware power is fine. It's more about the algorithm itself.
I think what needs to happen is for the venture capitalists, investors here in the room to find and fund the smartest builders here. For example, I'm an investor in OG, Michael's company, and I was so impressed with Michael's background, Stanford, the team, Y Combinator. I was like, wow, I want to fund this founder. So I think what's important is to find a very passionate, driven founders, companies, go all in for investors, and technology is growing, and I'm sure it will be there. So to answer this question on the behalf of Aethir, I think you guys are all welcome to our event tonight. It's gonna Mark, the founder of Aethir, will be there. He'll make it from Singapore, hopefully. It's at 7 p.m. CoinDesk, Aethir, and Yobi Capital, and we're gonna discuss decentralized AI. We also have the full day on Friday. It's gonna be the Aethir pre-launch day. We do it in partnership with DNA, 3 minutes walk in front of the convention center. So you can learn all about Aethir and GPU and how we use the encrypted technologies.
So everyone here is invited to the party tonight?
Yeah, everyone is invited. It's CoinDesk and Aethir, and Friday is the full day, and we go until 4 a.m. on Friday. So those who are still here, it's going to be 10 a.m. to 4 a.m. Yeah, we have a question in the audience.
Once you're finished.
Yeah, that's what I liked. How much time do we have? Christian, how much time?
15.
Yeah, cool. So actually, let's do some questions, guys. Let's do it.
Questions to the audience.
Go for it.
Yeah, so I think it's really cool where we're headed with this technology, right? A lot of talk about decentralized AI and open source, a lot of tech-heavy conversations, but what about the role human beings will play in governance? Like, do you have an incentive mechanism that doesn't include like a token? Like, what role will humanity play in this future?
That's a really, really good question. One that's always, we've had many painful discussions about that. I think that, and this goes back to, like, for me, I'll let these guys answer from their perspective, because, just at the very core, fundamental heart of that question, whether it's AI or anything else, we have an industry for the first time. So we have like an industry where, if you think about this, right? So for the history of investing, the history of business, the entire history of humanity, you have had an entrepreneur and says, I got a good idea, I need some money to get this thing going. An investor says, yeah, here you go, here's some money. And they go, cool, you now own some of my company, right? And then they make some progress, they hire some new people, maybe they add some new products, but it's still that same company, right? And all the new things that get built out underneath that company, all that revenue, all that value goes back to that one company, and then the original investor always knows that they're benefiting from the growth and success of the founders that they invested into, right? And then in 2000, then like, you know, it started happening, but in 2017, everyone's like, wait a minute. It's really easy to go raise money from a token? Okay, I'm just gonna do that from now, moving forward. And today, that still happens a lot, right? So like, I get a lot of calls, I'm a VC, so I get a lot of people, I'm like, so what does your token do? Oh no, man, we don't really need one. It's just much easier to raise money that way. Okay, bye. But that's a really big problem, right? And so you need, like, I'm going to give my high level about the token thing, and then I'll let you guys get more specific. But you're creating an economy. That's why they call it a token economy. And so I like to think of these things as digital network states or digital countries, right? And so you need to be sustainable, that token model. And you can't just have, like, if it's a deep-in project or something like that, you can't just have 50% of your supply sitting there saying that we're going to reward validators to come into a network, and then we're going to release 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% on unlock, because then you're looking at like Venezuelan-style inflation over the next few years, and there's no way that anyone can keep up with that. So there's no way that unless you're already just massively generating revenue and you think that your GDP can offset that kind of inflation. So it's really a big problem, because what happens is, like, VC's gotten smarter. They're like, okay, bro, I don't know exactly what you're gonna do, if your value is gonna accrue in the token side of things or the revenue side of things, but if I'm gonna give you money to build your business, I wanna make sure that whatever direction you go in, I'm covered either way, right? And as a very early stage investor myself, the founders often don't really know which direction they're gonna go. And they would tell me in the early days, I want to go decentralized. So to me, that means, okay, well then all the value accrual happens in the token. And then it's time to go to market, and they're like, yeah, you know, actually, now our token's just gonna kind of like do something over here, right? Or so 5 or 10% of the revenue goes to the token. I'm like, dude, I gave you all of your startup capital, and now you're telling me you're gonna go out and raise another round of equity, and it turns out that most of the value accrual is going to the equity, which I own none of. How is that fair, right? And I think this is like what is massive problem in our space, is that if you want to create a sustainable economic model where people want to govern and take roles in a DAO, then they need to be paid to do that, right? And then it needs to be proper incentive. Plus, you need a sustainable model. So just like a country, you need governance, you need taxation, you need revenue, you need investments, you need citizens. So all of that stuff needs to be thought about before you put a token out into the real world. And this is my humble opinion, is that there's only one real way to do this, and that is where all of the value accrual profit goes back to the token ecosystem. And the equity side of the business has no value at the end of the day, because if you're not building something that's actually, if your intent is not to become decentralized over time, then you have no need for a token. You have no need for governance, because you are controlling the protocol at the end of the day. That is how I feel largely for 99% of the things, and I will constantly debate people. Everybody comes back to me with a bunch of different things, saying, no, you're wrong because like X, Y, Z. I'm like, okay. And I'm open to those discussions, but that's something I'm very passionate about, and I think I've thought a lot about. But you'll notice if you're doing due diligence on projects, almost nobody does this. Almost nobody, right? So I don't know, that's just my 2 cents. There's a lot of people who disagree with me, but I haven't heard them give a good reason. Maybe for investors, but I have a problem ethically, morally, when you went out and hired a bunch of KOLs and influencers to tell the retail why they should go buy this token, when the perceived, they're not getting the value of that at the end of the day, or they don't have exposure to that side of things. So I'll let you guys answer that on how it relates to kind of your projects, and that if I did, like, I hope that I did, yeah, I hope that I didn't, like, I hope that you guys are doing the one that, you know what I mean.
I think the question was around alignment with AI models. So I think it's a great question because it goes kind of to this idea of parent-child relationships. How do we, as parents of these digital beings, steer them and guide them into a particular direction? And at what point do the parents learn from the children? And so one of the things we've been thinking about Zero-G is maybe even creating a foundation for enlightened AI. How do we bring AI to the values that we really care about so that we can build a world that is full of prosperity? So we can automate most of the processes that we don't want to do as human beings and have a world that's full of abundance. And so that's the world that I want to envision, where a lot can be automated through AI models, through humanoid robots, and create prosperity so that we as human beings can have choices in terms of what we pursue. Maybe we just want to do art all of our life. Maybe we want to go into a cave and meditate for 20 years. That can be possible if, for example, some of my professors think that we don't have to work for a living anymore in 2 generations. Like, that would be a super cool world. Like, wouldn't you want to live in a world full of abundance where you can choose your path? And we can make that happen if we steer these digital beings into a direction that's supportive. And so those are really the research areas of alignment and even super alignment if we're going beyond human intelligence.
Can I ask you a question on that? Let's say on that right there. How many of you guys have had parents who, like, really wanted you guys to, like, go to church, and they're like, this is the way, right? Or that they really wanted you to be a fireman or a doctor because they thought that was the best thing for you, and then you were just like, nah, I don't really want to do that. I don't believe it. I don't buy it. Like, my mom really wanted me to, like, believe in God, but like, for me, it wasn't the thing. I found my own way, and so I think that I'm just curious if you have any other idea on, like, and I am a techno optimist. Like, I even though I talk about PDUM and stuff like that, like, I want to deeply believe in what you're saying is true, and that, like, that we're going to be able to, like, these really intelligent things are going to be, like, good, and I hope they are the ones that, like, put us in a retirement home when we're old and, like, they're much, like, but I just think that what else could you do to, like, for the governance aspect of that? Like, what is there a point that you say this is getting out of control before the parent-teacher things where they become the parent and we become the old grandpa who needs, the nursing home?
Anybody else want to take that?
Yeah, I really like this comparison, Kyle, and I can totally relate to you. Came from the family of Soviet Union. Everything was about education. You have to go to school. I got my 3 master degrees, became an attorney, went into UC Berkeley. Didn't even start working until I was 27, sitting at schools. But going back to this, how, because we're all growing up in this family unit, so can we have AI babysitters or AI teachers who would overpower whatever our parents want us to do? Because I don't think that the family would let the AI educate us as much. But I really love what Michael was saying about living in the full abundance and choosing what we want to do when there's no more money problems, and how can AI incrementally solve this situation and for everyone to be free and open to do whatever they want. I love this kind of world.
I can tackle the incentive mechanism part of that question. I think you don't necessarily need human governance when it comes to an AI protocol. However, you do need to have the proper incentives in place. So the way that we're tackling it, as I mentioned, you're going to be taking a weighted average for a defined objective. And the person that is getting the most weight, they don't automatically get the most rewards. Sure, they may get the most weight, but then, as I mentioned, this is best geared towards things that are financial or behavioral in nature, where there is some sort of objective truth at the end. So let's go back to that example of what's the price of Bitcoin going to be in 1 hour? Well, okay, you create your inference, you have the weights of all the models. An hour from then, you actually know what the price of Bitcoin is. You use Chainlink, you use CoinGecko, you use whatever. But then based on how accurate these models were, that's the amount of reward that they get. So they're always incentivized to compete. They're always incentivized to be more and more accurate and to be the best. That's going to get them the most rewards. So as long as you have the proper incentive mechanisms in place, I think you can get things to do what you want them to do without human intervention, and they can manage themselves through incentives.
Yeah, and also similarly, yeah, I totally agree with Mike. Similarly, for the architecture that we designed, it's I think the monetary effect of the participants in a governance is still important, especially when we have slash mechanism for people who are playing evil and then be slashed out by the system, right? That's a way to at least have some barrier for people who are trying to become evil. So it's a good way. And in an earning way, yes, of course, people who are constantly being a good guy, they can earn some form of fortune and fame, yes, of course. But then on the bad way, on the other side, of course, that's a way to punish those who want to disorder the system.
What's your favorite loss function and why?
Sigmoid, simple, yeah.
Favorite what?
Your favorite loss function, why?
I don't know if I have.
What is log for? What is?
Loss function is how an AI model learns and converges and knows it's getting feedback from how close it is to its objectives. And there are different ones, like mean squared error, like you square the distance between your guess, like the price of Bitcoin, for example.
Mean directional loss.
That's the one you're using, or you like for your ensemble network?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll go with that.
Sigma is beautiful. It's like a basic for everything, right? Like ReLU, it's all, yeah, I like it.
And I don't mean to be like play this kind of protagonist and these kind of things, but like I also bring these things up in public forums because I don't hear people talking about them often enough. And then I just have my own philosophy, and then I'm often just interested to hear people challenge kind of my train of thought because people typically don't. And so I don't know if I'm completely wrong because I don't know what I don't know, and I could be missing a lot of things, you know. But I am very, very deeply interested in, like, I'll tell you that my life has always been led by things I'm passionate about and then very interested in. The first one was anti-aging and regenerative medicine. That was my first career for 8 years, and then I was starting a pretty big business there, and then I just became obsessed with Bitcoin, like with first kind of Silk Road and the whole thing, Free Ross, and then and Julian and Edward Snowden. But then it was Bitcoin, and now it's in AI. I've seen it coming, but it's becoming more and more and more because I think it's going to make such a massive impact in our life that most people haven't even thought about. We don't even have the capability to think about the kind of changes that are going to be made. So all the guys that are working on it, thank you. Please be careful. I'm very, very excited for it. I think we have to wrap up, guys, but thank you.